Hi, and welcome to the Sister's Guide to Financial Freedom. I'm your host, Crystal, and I'm joined by the wonderful Jennifer. Hello, Jennifer.
Hi, Crystal.
And we are here today because Black Americans are at a disadvantage when it comes to wealth in this country. And we want to do our part to change the tide of that trend. We have stories, personal experiences, and lessons learned that we hope will help you as you are going through your personal financial journey. So again, thank you for joining us today. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Oh, thank you, Crystal, for having me here. So I'm excited today to talk about budget basics with you and share some of our own personal insights.
Yes. I was reading a survey, and it was done by Intuit in 2020, and one of the stats that they had was that 60% of people do not know how much money they spent last month. And I was like, really? How do people not know what they're spending? How can you do that and be on this journey to financial freedom and not understand how much money you've spent? So that is one of the reasons why I thought it was really important to have this conversation, just open conversations about budgets and why they're important, and how this can help in terms of getting you towards your financial freedom goals.
Yeah. And it can be scary. It can be scary for a lot of people to know where their money goes, especially if you're sitting in a situation where you feel that you're not free in your current personal journey to financial freedom. And if you're not there, it's hard. And I'm happy to share with you, because I know I've already told you before. I personally am challenged by keeping in a budget. So it's not an easy place to be at, but I think that if you do get to a point where you have something, it can certainly aid to your success in that journey. So a lot of times it's easier to bury your head in the sand than to face the reality of something that's difficult or challenging.
Yeah.
You certainly feel that way around money.
Yes, absolutely. So the first question that I wanted to tackle was, why is having a budget an important part of financial freedom?
Yeah. I mean, I hear this in my household all the time. Knowledge is key. It all starts with knowing. And sometimes even the things that are challenging for us, if you really can get yourself to a place to have that knowledge and be armed with that information, you can then start making decisions and doing things that will really set you on a different path or a different trajectory than where you might be. So, I think although it's hard, and I'll tell anybody in a minute, oh, do you keep a budget? I try. I always try, but it's hard. So I wouldn't say that I do have a budget that kind of frames out the money that we're bringing in, the expenses that we're expecting or not expecting, kind of having a plan for all the dollars spent. But I try, meaning that I start with something and try to always have our household armed with the knowledge of what we're doing or what we anticipate to do as best we can.
Yeah, I think it's also important to have a budget, because not only do you need to understand how you're leveraging your resources, but you want to be able to take control of your money and not have your money controlling you. And having a budget helps to manage through those emotional decisions as well. So if you've got your budget and you've got your dollars allocated to it, and somebody is asking you for something, your kids want pair of shoes. Well, we already spent our money that's allocated this month. So, it frees you from those emotional decisions too. But, it's like you said, it's not an easy thing to do at all. But I think as you're moving forward in your journey to financial freedom, it's a critical tool and practice to be in.
Yeah. And we talk about goals. And if you have a goal, if there's something that you're looking to aspire to, a budget is the framework or the way to get to that.
Yes.
You know, and I like what you just said around helping and making those decisions, because when you're trying to determine how you're going to, you know, work with the money that you have, kind of knowing or having a game plan before you kind of get, I'll say, off on these tangents of, impulsive, buy or spending on something that you didn't plan or expect to. If you have that discipline around knowing, okay, this is what I have, then you can, be in a informed position in making those type of decisions. So I don't know. How do we talk about maybe some of the basics? Like, how do you get started? Because part of, I guess my personal philosophy is getting started, getting started with anything, because you start that momentum and then all of a sudden it becomes easier. So, let's think about how, I'll say my children who are in their 20s, my daughter just getting ready to start her first job. Maybe we talk a little bit around how do we get started with, if you don't have a budget, if you don't have a sense where to get started with a budget, how do we do that? How do you get started from the beginning? Or how did you get started?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, it is an equation, right? And it's taking a close look at the money that you're bringing in or your income, how much money are you making, versus how much money are you spending, your expenses, your savings. And the equation I use is income minus savings, because savings is such a critical
Always
part of
first.
financial freedom.
I like how you said that, because pay yourself first.
Yes.
So that savings, anytime you have an income from whatever sources, if you're paying yourself first, I like how you put that first in that equation. So yeah, income, then you take off your savings.
Yes.
I'm paying myself first, and then I'm left with
then your expenses and all that. At the end of the day, you want a balanced budget. I mean, you hear the government talking about balancing the budget. I mean, when you think about your personal finances and your personal budget, it is, your money should be allocated somewhere. And that is a good practice to have. Again, controlling your money versus it, controlling all of your just emotional decisions.
So if I know, even before I know what my expenses are, if I know my income and I set something aside for myself, and I think the target we always heard in our household from Dad was, 10%. Your goal should be somewhere in the vicinity of 10%. It may be smaller when you're just starting off, and it may be more, the more income you make and the more further you get along in your journey. But you should kind of always be looking at being in and around 10%. So once you have your income and you set aside what you think for your own personal self, what your savings amount should be, then you're left with a pocket of call it disposable income. This is the income I have to spend on my expenses. Then let's break down the expenses, because you're going to have expenses of things that you need. You're going to have things you want. There are going to be other pieces of it. So,
I call those the essentials and then entertainment.
Okay, essentials and entertainment. I like that. So you're entertaining yourself through spending the money on the things maybe that bring you joy, the things that you enjoy from a hobby, maybe things that you'd like to do for other people, whatever that is. But I think what we're talking about here is really then looking at the pot you have after you've paid yourself and setting your budget or understanding how you're spending it, either how you have been spending it by maybe looking in the rear view mirror to say, well, where did my money go last month? And sometimes I think that's an easy place to start. If you look at it and see what your spending habits are, it's like, what am I really spending on? And how does that align with what's important to me?
Yes.
I know back when we first were married and did more things with cash back then. I can't remember the last time I've even taken cash out at the ATM, but in the early part of our marriage, you'd go and take out cash, and then at the end of the month, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. We took out cash, these 3 times. Well, where did that money go? Mm-hmm. So, I think it's, back to understanding how we're spending our money. Mm-hmm. It's looking at how and what it's going to. And sometimes, taking out of cash is fine, but we had to very quickly, set some parameters around that. Set a budget around it instead of just saying, oh, go take out cash whenever it's low and, get another $20, get another $20. Set a specific amount that, what, we're not going to take out more than X dollar of cash in any given month because we want to stay within a certain parameter within our budget. So, I think having an understanding of where you're spending your money can help you better plan for how you want to spend your money. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times it can start with just looking at what you've done in any given month and think about, did I really spend that on the things that are important to me? And if not, revisit it. I mean, like you said, let you be cognizant about how you're spending money. Don't let your money control you.
Yeah. And I think what makes it easier now versus when I started my first budget is that everything is electronic, right? You can go to your bank account and you can look at all those debit charges and start to categorize them like, okay, am I spending, where am I spending it? And that sort of tells you what your spending habits are, what your bills are. You do have to have all of that in one place so you have a good picture of, here is everything that's going out. How do I categorize it? How do I streamline that? Are there things I need to be taking out of this because it's eating up all my cash, which I need to put in, another bucket? So, definitely taking that inventory of where your money is going and tracking that. It's a discipline, but again, if you're serious about moving yourself from point A to B from a financial freedom standpoint, it's something that it's a tool that you have to do and really understand.
You have to know where your money's going and then make those sometimes very difficult decisions around, hey, wow, we spent this much or this percentage of the money that we had on dining out or on cash withdrawals or, in this day and age, maybe even on gas. And it's like, how do you then really tackle making an improvement in that space? Meaning, how do I really start moving myself to the things that are important to me? Yeah. And I think the budget enables you to have the information to be able to really sit and contemplate and make those decisions.
So as I was preparing for today's conversation, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's married, and they had gotten a lot of bills in, and they didn't have a budget, and they just decided, look, we need to sit down and meet and talk about how we're going to manage this because there's, these bills keep coming in. How are we going to get through this? So they sat down at their kitchen table and plotted out, all their expenses that they had coming up, what utilities they had, what, gas bills, their student loan payments, everything. They just aggregated it into a spreadsheet and figured out, all right, here's what I need to pay out every month. Here's how much income we have coming in. And they realized, okay, we don't have a lot of room for all these extra things, right? And they sat down and agreed to, okay, here's our budget. Here's how we're going to start spending our money because we need to get control over this situation. So, at the end of that whole exercise, they were so happy that, they came to an agreement. And then they sat down after dinner on the couch and, was watching their favorite program. And her husband got up and got his coat on. She's like, well, where are you going? And he's like, I'm going to hang out with the fellas. I'm meeting the fellas out. And she's like, we just went through this budgeting exercise and we did not include.
Did you budget in there for beer?
You didn't have this in the budget. And he was looking at her like, oh, yeah, you're right. You're right. So so, he had his coat on, and then he went over and got her coat and handed it to her. And she was like, you never take me out to hang out with the guys. So now you're going to take me out. And he's like, no, I'm turning down the heat. Put your coat on.
We're going to sit here and maybe do something together.
No, he was going out, but she was going to stay home in the cold house because that was his
Wait a minute. That was his compromise?
That was his compromise. That was a joke. That was a joke that I saw.
We're going to save on the gas.
Yeah. But the thing is,
so I can do my other thing. But that's what budgeting's all
it
about.
Is. That was the joke I found, just so you're clear. I don't have a friend that had that situation. But I thought that it was, the moral of the story is there has to be some flexibility, right? And there has to be a lot of compromise for budgets because you cannot... every month is going to be different. Things are going to come up, and you want to be able to do those impromptu things. Okay, going and hanging out with the fellas wasn't in the budget, but we're going to have to figure out how we compromise
how to compensate
on
for it.
Yes.
Well, that's what it's all about, having that knowledge to know instead of just, I'm going to go out and then I'm going to use a credit card and incur debt because this is something I really want to do. I think it can help you know that, hey, this is what I have for that. When that's done, if I'm going to do more in that space, I need to sit back and maybe think about it first before I make the choice to do it.
Yes.
Not that you might not make the choice still to do it, but you'll at least do it in an informed sense. So you don't look up at the end of the month and then you've got a hole that you're trying to dig yourself out of.
That's my joke for the day.
Yeah, love that.
So what tools should someone use to create their budget?
So, start with, you mentioned it, online banking. And right now, if you have an if you have a bank account, which if you're earning income, you should have a bank account because that's where your money should be going in. That's where you should be managing it from, not from a cash perspective, but that's a conversation for a different day. So, but the banks these day and age all have some type of online banking available. And many of them have, different tools available, or there are so many apps or tools out there that are online that can help you get started with the budget. But even if you aren't savvy and want to go electronic means, really all you need is a piece of paper and a pencil and a calculator or Excel if you want to put it on a computer, where you're just list out on a piece of paper. Well, how much do I make in any given month? So know what your income is after taxes, after your company takes out everything. Know what you are making, and then set something aside for yourself. On every dollar you make, you should be saving something. Even if the dollars you make are small and you think, gosh, I don't make enough to cover everything that I need, you will not get on the pathway to break the cycle if you don't pay yourself first. So start with that. Say, I know I'm getting this amount in each month. I'm going to put something aside for myself. Again, the North Star and all that is 10%, but maybe I'm just starting out and I'm only going to save 1% or 2%. I would just encourage you to make it something.
Yes.
And then look at what you have left. And then from there, list out, well, what is my rent? Add it up. Know that I'm paying, $375 in rent and $35 in electricity and $10 in, water, whatever it is. Know what you are going to have to pay to live in wherever you are living right now.
Did you say $375 in rent?
Well, I just thrown some numbers out.
Where is that? Because in Chicago, I think the average rent is over $2,000.
Maybe I'm renting a room in somebody's house, but I'm just throwing out numbers just to say know what it is and know what it is in manageable increments. So, what is it every month that it takes me to have a roof over my head? What is it every month to have food to eat? What is it every month for my transportation to be able to make it to my job? And arm yourself with that knowledge of what it's going to take and add it up. Yes. And it may be that, I can't live with the income that I'm making. And that's a different conversation for a different day around how do I, increase my income. But know what your income is and know what your expenses, your living expenses are for what you need, and then or what you call your entertainment, and then the other things that, you know what, I really like to shop or like to have, new wardrobe, not a new wardrobe, but maybe new pieces in my wardrobe every season. So I want to have something in here so that I'm, putting that in and planning for it. And I think, when you think of budget, and again, it can be as simple as just a piece of paper and a calculator, and I'm putting my income in, and then I'm putting in what I expect, either looking in the rearview mirror, what did I spend last month for this?
Yep.
Or what do I expect to have to spend for this? And what does that leave me? And then you can look at it and say, I'm going to have something at the end of the month, or I'm not going to have something at the end of the month. I'm going to have to make different choices or decisions around things, but at least you're armed with the knowledge of understanding what can my money bring for me, or what can my money give for me at any given time.
Yes.
And that's really what budgeting is.
And then putting it somewhere and looking at it frequently, because it's not a one and done. You have to keep going back and looking at it. My husband and I just refreshed our budget, and we do ours in a spreadsheet. And, it's a good reminder of, there's not, our dollars are allocated everywhere. So, if you're coming up with something off the cuff that's not in there, like, we really do need to talk about it and, make those adjustments where we can. But I wanted to move into our segment, Two Sides of the Coin. And so in this segment, for those who are listening and watching, in this segment, Two Sides of the Coin, we get a question from our listener or viewer, and both Jenny and I will provide a different perspective on it, or our own perspective. It may be the same. But the question this week is, why do so many people fail to budget or stick to their budgets?
It's hard. I think I told you this already before. I'm terrible at budgeting. Now, I have goals, and I do set things out there that, hey, I want to get to this, but having the discipline of, okay, this is how I'm going to get it, and making that plan and sticking to that plan, it's hard, because anybody in my house will tell you, yeah, well, we've gone through this. We know where the expenses are going, or we've laid out the budget. But making that decision not to go hang out with the friends, or making that decision not to do something, that takes discipline, and it's hard. And so I think people fail to budget because a lot of times it's easier is like, well, if I don't know, then I can do these things, and maybe it'll all work out in the end, or maybe it won't.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's hard to kind of face the facts and face the music of, hey, this is what we have, this is what we're trying to do. And especially if you're working with a budget where it's not balanced, like our government, we can't just go print money, but you got to figure out how you're going to fill that gap. And so a lot of times, just with things in life, sometimes it's easier, well, I'll just wing it and we'll see what happens. But kind of owning up to know that, wow, I don't have enough to cover everything I want to do or want to accomplish in getting to a balanced budget. It's not easy. So
I think that sometimes we set unrealistic expectations or put too much pressure on ourselves. And when we think about budgeting, to me, it's not about failure. It's more about having a destination, having that goal. And it's almost like being on a road trip, right? Yeah. You have your map, and you know where you're headed, and you map that course out, and it shows you exactly which highways to go on. And you may be down that highway, and then you see a road sign, and it's like, oh, there's an excursion here. Let's go off and see this. But eventually you're going to get back on that road to get to your destination. So, we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves. It's not an easy thing to do, but it is a discipline and a tool that is really critical as you are on this journey to financial freedom and whatever that definition of financial freedom is for you. You're on that journey, and, don't be afraid, or it's not necessarily a failure if you've deviated from the course that you've set for yourself. You always learn something, you get something out of it, and then you get back on track.
With anything. So, but I do think if you have the discipline to pay yourself first, it gives you some flexibility.
Yes.
When you are off the path, or at least maybe more peace of mind that, hey, I'm off the path for now, I'm this tangent, but I'm also, working towards this, something that's out there that you're working for, consistently, that you're keeping to. So, so yeah, it's not easy, but I think it enables you, once you do have that knowledge and have that information, to be in a position to put yourself on a pathway.
Yeah. So we've come to the end of today's discussion. Just wondering if you have any final words of wisdom to share as we're wrapping up this conversation around budgets and
get started. I would encourage our listeners to come up with one thing. Do one thing. Even if it's just 1 month, I'm going to look at my expenses for 1 month and take one thing out of that. You don't have to change the world in a day. You don't have to change your budget in a day. But I would just encourage everyone, take a moment, look back at the last 30 days and really look at how you spent your money, and challenge yourself to make one change or one difference that puts you on the path to what's important for you in your in your journey for financial freedom.
Yes. So let's keep the conversation going. We'll be back with more episodes, but for our viewers and our listeners, you can follow us on Instagram at The Sisters Guide. If you have questions for us, or have some comments for today's discussion, today's podcast, please put it in our, connect with us via Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. And, just remember that this journey to financial freedom is not a sprint. It is a marathon. So while you're on this race, just continue to be positive, and to be intentional, and to be disciplined, and it'll be amazing to see how far you can go. So thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Crystal.
Thank you, Jen.